This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain an action, thriller, and horror film called Night Teeth. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. In a world where vampires and humans coexist, a professional chauffeur, Jay, is driving at night with his girlfriend, Maria, when he suddenly sees Victor, a vampire, chasing after him. Jay takes a gun out of the glove compartment and drives to his base to warn his men about Victor, but not without instructing his girlfriend to drive off without him to go to safety. However, he's too late, for his men are already dead and hanging upside down. Meanwhile, Victor breaks through Jay's car and takes Maria. On the other hand, Jay's half-brother, Benny, comes home to his grandmother and sees Jay in his room, a rare sight for him because he rarely sees him at home. Then, he overhears Jay talking on the phone, looking for someone to take over his chauffeur shift for the night because he needs to look for his girlfriend. For Benny, that's good news because he's eager to earn a few bucks, so he tries to convince Jay to let him drive, but he won't let him, saying that he doesn't have the skills to take over his place. Benny then gives up, and instead he keeps pestering Jay about his plans for the night, thinking that he's only having relationship troubles. However, Benny becomes concerned when he sees Jay take a dagger from his box of personal stuff, making Jay brush him off rudely. But in the end, Jay feels bad about keeping secrets from Benny and lets him take over his chauffeur shift on the condition that he must pretend to be him. That evening, Benny happily picks up his clients for the night, Zoe and Blair. In a fancy mansion in Beverly Hills, he introduces himself as Jay, but he's immediately flustered, making it obvious that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's also unaware that his zipper is open, and forgets to open the car door for the girls, showing that he's a newbie. Nonetheless, they give Benny the addresses for the 5 destinations that they need to go before the break of dawn. However, as he drops them off at the first location where a fancy party seems to be taking place, Benny notices a peculiar badge that needs to be scanned before going inside. Meanwhile, Jay calls his men, the Watchers of Boyle Heights, to settle a situation with Victor, despite feeling bad that he has to break the peace between the humans and the vampires. Back at the party, Benny suddenly hears a woman screaming from within the mansion and decides to step out of the car, but he accidentally steps on one of the badges like Zoe's, so he takes it. Then, a few seconds later, Zoe and Blair come out of the place and order Benny to drive to the next location. While waiting in the vehicle, Benny hears Zoe's phone go off and sees that they left their belongings inside. He tries to ignore it but feels distracted by the constant buzzing, so he checks the phone and sees text messages from Victor talking about Jay. Feeling that something is off with the situation, Benny leaves a voice message to Jay expressing his concern. Afterward, he takes Zoe's bag and checks inside, only to see it filled with cash. He then eagerly flips through the bills, and that's when he notices that there are blood splatters on them. Suddenly, a police car shows up, making Benny panic. While the cop is checking out each car in the parking lot, Benny takes his chance to run inside the building. A concierge then greets and informs him that the place is exclusive to members, so she threatens to call the police on him. However, when Benny stops her as she's about to make the call, she sees him holding one of the badges and immediately apologizes for her behavior. Benny tells her that he's there to meet up with Blair and Zoe, so she escorts him to the elevator. When Benny gets to the designated floor, he goes straight to the room where the 2 girls are in, only to see them drinking blood from 2 men strapped to the beds. As Benny sees their true form, Zoe pins him on the wall and threatens to drink his blood, which makes him confess that he's not actually Jay. Still, Zoe plans to drink his blood either way until Blair convinces her that he might come in handy by taking them to the real Jay. Then, suddenly one of the men wakes up, and Zoe scolds Blair for not finishing off her victim. Scared, the man reminds him that they're not allowed to kill off whoever's blood they're drinking, and that the bosses will burn them alive for breaking the rules of the place. But Blair and Zoe seem to have other plans as they finish off the guy. Benny then takes the opportunity to run away while they're preoccupied. Down in the parking lot, Benny seeks help from the police officer, telling him everything he's seen upstairs. However, the officer handcuffs him, but Benny doesn't mind because he wants to get out of that place. Unfortunately, Benny doesn't expect the police officer to open the trunk of his car and attempt to put him inside, telling him that what happens upstairs stays upstairs. He then pulls a gun on Benny, but Blair and Zoe arrive right on time to let him off the hook. Zoe orders Benny to get back to driving the car, then breaks his phone when he tries to text for help. Elsewhere, Victor drinks with 2 of his bosses, Ava and Grace, who immediately remind him of his lowly position as well as the rules of their secret society. They also make it clear that they will punish Victor for stepping foot into Boyle Heights. However, Victor reveals his grand plan to take down the bosses of their hierarchy to become the leader, tired of living peacefully with the humans when they're much more powerful. So, in the end, he kills both Ava and Grace. While stopping by at a convenience store, Benny freaks out about what's happening, so Blair tries to console him and explains the whole situation that 5 bosses rule the major territories in LA, and they're going to each location to kill them in one night, so that Zoe can rule the place with Victor, her boyfriend. Blair also reveals that Jay's crew runs Boyle Heights, but when Victor asked for his help, he refused. Because of that, Victor took Maria and instructed Blair and Zoe to bring Jay to him once everything was done. Concurrently, Zoe talks to Victor on the phone and informs him that they have Jay's younger brother instead of him, but Victor doesn't really mind and says that they can use him, adding that they're close to claiming the city. Later on, Benny goes inside the convenience store to buy something to drink, and Zoe tells him that Blair likes him. Meanwhile, Jay and his men visit Geo, one of the vampire leaders, and discover what Blair and Zoe did to him on Victor's orders. Then, once they find out Victor's location, they repeatedly shoot him before he could attack them. At the third location, Benny tries to strike a deal with Zoe to let him go, but of course, she doesn't. Before heading inside the club, Benny comes across some of his mean classmates that tried to leech off him when they're inside the club, but he's apprehensive. His classmates then make fun of him for seeming like a butler, so Blair kisses him to show off. Inside a VIP room in the club, Zoe and Blair find their target gone and get cornered by another group of vampire hunters called the Night Legion. The hunters aim their crossbows at the two, but before they could strike, Benny hits their leader in the head with a bottle, serving as a distraction and helping the girls take down the men. Downstairs, Jay arrives just in time to see Benny in the distance, leaving alongside Zoe and Blair. Worried for his brother, he shouts his name and walks up to catch them, but a vampire gets in his way and refuses to let him go through. So, he stabs him. He then gets cornered by a few of the Night Legion members who want to recruit him to their team. Outside, a few of the hunters are still on the trio's trail, so they hurry, letting Benny drive them to a safe location to lay low for a while. So the naive college boy takes him to his own house. Zoe calls Victor to update him about the situation, but she's having doubts about their plan, afraid that they might mess things up because everything has been going awry. But Victor tells her to keep going, reminding her that they're almost done. On the other hand, Blair and Benny bond for a while in his bedroom and talk about their personal lives, clearly interested in one another. Because of this, Blair asks Zoe to let Benny stay at home and be done with him, but of course, she doesn't accept, hoping to clear any loose ends. However, Benny doesn't plan to stay because he wants to help his brother. Meanwhile, Jay gets pulled over by the police officer from earlier and delivers a message from Victor that he wants to meet him in a restaurant. He then drives over there, but before he goes inside, he tells his colleague to take care of Benny in case something happens to him. After that, Jay finds Victor eating a plate of meat and confronts him about the situation. Victor tells Jay that all the bosses are gone and that he should have taken his offer to work alongside him. But even though Jay wants to uphold the truce between their kinds, he's more concerned about Maria and Benny. So, he attacks Victor and shoots him in the head, and then he tries to stab him. But Victor's wound simply heals. Unbothered, Victor tells Jay that the meat that he's eating is Maria's. At the same time, the three arrive at Rocco's and try to have a small talk with him, but Rocco is sharp-witted and feels a bit suspicious of their sudden arrival. Zoe tells Blair and Benny to wait outside so that she can talk to Rocco, so they wait by the pool and have their own conversation. Blair and Benny open up more to each other, and soon enough, the two start making out. Inside, Rocco drinks with Zoe and asks her about their real motive. Zoe tries to play cool while she subtly grabs her blade to finish off Rocco, but he knows about their plan and tries to ambush Zoe, his men suddenly appearing from behind. Meanwhile, Blair reveals to Benny that Victor has Jay before they notice the fight inside Rocco's establishment when a guy gets thrown outside. After instructing Benny to get to the car, Blair rushes to assist Zoe, but the Night Legion also ambushes them as they try to escape. Zoe gets hit by an arrow, and while the hunter is reloading, Benny runs him over with the car to help the girls. They then rush to Victor's house to end their reign of terror for the night while Zoe lies on Blair's lap, dying. Blair commands Benny to just take the car and run away because he won't be safe if he goes inside with them, but Benny is adamant about saving Jay and refuses to leave. However, Blair convinces him that it's already too late to do anything. So, Benny goes back to the car and contemplates leaving, but in the end, he really can't abandon his brother. Benny sneaks inside Victor's house with a bat and finds a secret basement full of glass cages holding people hostage, their necks in chains as they're being used as Victor's human blood bags. Then, at the end of the room, he finds Jay inside one of the cages. He immediately attempts to break it, but Victor catches him and brings him upstairs with Blair and a recovered Zoe, who's back to full strength after having fresh blood. Benny bargains with Victor to take him instead of Jay and then tries to sneak attack him with a dagger, but Victor is too fast for him. Victor says that he'll have Benny for the appetizer, Jay for the main course, and their grandmother for dessert, making Benny angry and charge at him. However, Zoe just blocks his path and eagerly kicks him. Because of this, Blair stands to protect Benny and speaks against Zoe's methods, saying that she's finally had enough of the kind of life that they're living. So, Zoe tries to calm her down, obvious that she doesn't want to part ways with her. Victor then hands the dagger to Zoe, and she stabs Blair to stop her from leaving. Victor also tells Zoe to finish off Blair, but before she could do that, Benny starts the car with the remote, making it crash into Victor's house after he perched a rock on the gas pedal. As a result, sunlight bursts through the place and incinerates Zoe. Meanwhile, Jay escapes from the basement and tells Benny to run, but he refuses and tries to get closer to his brother. However, Victor pulls Jay back and nonchalantly bites Benny in the neck. Soon after that, Blair repeatedly stabs Victor in the back, but he doesn't even get hurt, and strikes her. Then, as Victor is about to kill Benny, Jay charges at him and pushes him into the sunlight. With Victor now gone, Blair crawls over to Benny, and the two feed on each other's blood to save their lives. Later on, Benny wakes up back in his house and puts his hand in front of the sun, thinking that he might have turned into a vampire after drinking Blair's blood. He also checks his neck wound and sees that he's fully healed. That night, the brothers have a little drink, and Benny leaves Jay with a bag of cash that he got from Zoe. At school, Benny stares at his classmate's neck and suddenly finds himself thirsty for her blood, but he manages to control himself and look away. Then, when Blair picks him up for a night out, he offers his classmates a ride and smiles, revealing his fangs.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.